I'm Clara Jennings, 30 years old, and I never thought my wedding day would turn into a nightmare. Everything was perfect, until my brother lost it. In the middle of the reception, he grabbed a glass of red wine and splashed it across my white dress, staining it crimson. Before I could react, he shoved the dessert table, sending cakes and pastries crashing to the floor. Guests gasped, but he wasn't done. He shouted, "This is what you get for acting like you're better." His words hit harder than the wine. I stood there, my dress ruined, my heart racing, while my parents rushed to his side. "He's just letting it out," they said, hugging him like he was the victim. My husband stared, stunned, as whispers spread through the crowd. I wanted to scream, to demand answers, but I stayed silent. My brother's outburst wasn't just a tantrum. It was years of resentment exploding. My parents' defense? That was betrayal. I clenched my fists, feeling the weight of every sacrifice I'd made for them. Right then, I decided to do something no one saw coming. I wouldn't let this slide. Not after they crossed that line. What happened next changed everything. And they'd soon find out what I was capable of. Have you ever faced family drama that flipped your world upside down? Drop your story in the comments. I'm reading every one. Growing up in Hartford, Connecticut, my family lived modestly with my parents' small diner. And back then, life was a constant hustle. My father, Peter Jennings, and my mother, Diana Jennings, poured everything into that diner, but it barely kept us afloat. The place was a local staple, serving greasy burgers and milkshakes, but profits were thin. Bills piled up, and by the time I was 15, I knew I had to step up. I started waitressing at a nearby cafe after school, juggling orders and rude customers for tips that paid our electricity bill. On weekends, I delivered pizzas, racing through snowy streets to earn an extra $50 a week. Every cent went to the family, groceries, rent, whatever kept us going. At that time, I realized my place in the family. My brother, Ethan Jennings, 9 years younger and in middle school, was the golden child. Mom and Dad showered him with praise for every little thing, a soccer goal, a decent report card, while my straight A's and debate team wins barely got a nod. By 16, I was working part-time at a coffee shop, saving for college and helping with household bills. Ethan's needs always came first, from new clothes to his high school prep courses costing hundreds of dollars. I didn't mind then. I thought it was my duty. But the imbalance grew clearer as I juggled schoolwork and their expectations while Ethan, barely a teenager, coasted on their affection. I didn't mind helping at first. I loved my family and I wanted us to stay together. But the weight of it grew heavier each year. By 17, I was working 2 jobs, waitressing and tutoring classmates, to save for college. I applied for every scholarship I could find, knowing my parents couldn't afford tuition. Ethan, meanwhile, got a new bike for his birthday. No questions asked. I'd overhear Mom telling him, "Don't worry, Clara's got us covered." It stung, but I swallowed my frustration, thinking it was just how families worked. Looking back, I see how their favoritism shaped Ethan. He never learned to fend for himself. When he was 12, I caught him stealing $20 from my wallet for snacks. Instead of punishing him, Dad laughed it off, saying, "Boys will be boys." I confronted Mom, but she brushed me off, claiming Ethan was just a kid. That was the first time I felt a crack in our family bond. I started noticing how they'd praise Ethan for the smallest things, like passing a math test, while my straight-A report cards got a nod at best. I kept working, kept paying for our needs, but the resentment started to build. By the time I graduated high school, I'd earned a full scholarship to a state university. It was my ticket out. But I didn't leave my family behind. I sent money home every month, $200 here, $300 there, to cover Ethan's school supplies or the diner's overdue bills. Ethan was 15 then, old enough to get a part-time job, but my parents never pushed him. "He's not like you, Clara," they'd say, as if I was born to carry the load. Ethan would smirk, knowing he'd get whatever he wanted without effort. I'd see him with new headphones or a fancy jacket, and I'd wonder why I was the only one sacrificing. That dynamic set the stage for everything that came later. My parents' diner never thrived, but they always found money for Ethan's whims, money that often came from me. I thought I was helping my family survive, but I was enabling Ethan's dependency. His entitlement grew, and so did his bitterness toward me. I didn't realize how deep it ran until years later, when it all exploded. After graduating college, I started my job as a software engineer at a major company. With a full scholarship, I'd clawed my way through university, studying late nights while working part-time. Landing a role at a tech firm in Hartford was my breakthrough. My salary, $80,000 a year, felt like a fortune compared to my parents' diner, which barely cleared expenses. I was proud, but the money didn't just change my life. It became the lifeline for my family. My brother, Ethan Jennings, was in college, chasing a vague business degree. I paid his tuition, $10,000 a semester, plus his rent, $500 monthly, and even bought him a used car for $3,000. Every month, I sent Mom and Dad extra cash to keep their diner afloat. They never asked Ethan to contribute. "You're doing so well, Clara," Mom would say, as if my success was theirs to spend. 2 years into my job, I met my boyfriend, Nathan Cole, at a tech conference in Boston. He was a systems engineer, sharp and kind, with a quick laugh that made me feel seen. Nathan came from a comfortable family. His parents owned a small manufacturing business, and he carried himself with quiet confidence. We bonded over coding challenges and late-night coffee, and soon we were inseparable. I brought him to meet my parents, hoping they'd see what I saw. Instead, Dad barely looked up from his newspaper, muttering, "He's not one of us." Mom forced a smile, but later whispered, "He's too polished." "Clara, be careful." Their coldness stung, but I brushed it off, thinking they just needed time. Ethan, though, took it to another level. He'd roll his eyes when I mentioned Nathan, mocking my perfect life. "What's it like being successful?" He'd sneer, lounging in the apartment I paid for. Yet he had no problem asking for more money, $50 for textbooks, $100 for new clothes. I gave in, hoping he'd grow up. But his resentment only deepened. Once, at a family dinner, he scoffed, "You think you're better than us, don't you?" I laughed it off, but his words lingered. Mom and Dad didn't correct him. They just changed the subject, praising Ethan's latest C-grade exam like it was a Nobel Prize. My promotions, my projects, they barely got a nod. When Nathan proposed 3 years later, I was over the moon. He got down on one knee at a quiet park, offering a simple ring that felt like a promise of something real. We planned a modest wedding, wanting to start our life together right. I told my family, expecting at least some excitement. Mom's response? "Are you sure about him? He's so different," Dad just grunted. "Hope you're not rushing." Ethan was worse. He texted me, "Getting married to your fancy guy?" Good luck keeping up with his world. His sarcasm cut deep. But I ignored it, focusing on Nathan's support. Still, I kept sending money, $600 that month alone, for Ethan's car insurance and Mom's new diner equipment. The tension peaked when we announced our engagement at the diner. I'd hoped for a warm moment, maybe a toast. Instead, Mom sighed, "Weddings are expensive, Clara. Don't expect us to chip in." Dad nodded, adding, "Ethan's got his own expenses." Ethan smirked. "Yeah, don't let your big-shot fiancé make us look bad." I felt my chest tighten. Nathan squeezed my hand, his calm grounding me. But I saw the pattern clearly now. My family didn't just lean on me. They expected me to carry them while tearing me down. Ethan's bitterness wasn't about Nathan. It was about me daring to build a life beyond their reach. That realization hit hard, and it set the stage for the chaos that would soon unfold. Planning the wedding was a nightmare I never saw coming. Nathan and I wanted a simple ceremony, maybe 200 guests at a local banquet hall in Hartford. We budgeted $20,000, all from our savings, hoping for a day to remember. I thought my family would pitch in, even just a little. Instead, they turned it into a battleground, with Ethan leading the charge. He was supposed to be a groomsman, but when I asked him to join Nathan for suit fittings, he blew it off. "Those things are a waste of time," he texted, leaving Nathan to handle it alone. I called him, hoping to reason, but he snapped, "I'm not your errand boy, Clara." His attitude wasn't new, but it cut deeper now, especially since I was still paying $10,000 a semester for his final year at college. Then came the venue. We picked a modest hall with wooden floors and big windows. Affordable, but nice. Ethan visited once and scoffed. "This place looks cheap." "You're embarrassing us." I explained it was what we could afford, but he rolled his eyes. "Your fancy fiancé should do better." His words stung, especially since I was covering his rent, $600 a month, on top of his tuition. Worse, he demanded a designer suit for the wedding, costing $3,000, claiming, "I need to look good in the photos." When I refused, he whined to Mom and Dad. They backed him up, with Mom saying, "Ethan deserves to feel confident." Dad added, "You're doing fine." "Clara, just cover it." I was floored. They hadn't offered a dime for the wedding, but expected me to foot Ethan's bill. It didn't stop there. Ethan insisted I buy him a new car, $15,000, so he could arrive in style. I laughed, thinking it was a joke, but he doubled down. "You owe me for always being in your shadow," he said, his voice bitter. I told him no, firmly. But Mom called later, pleading. "He's stressed, Clara. Help him out." I reminded her I was already stretched thin, covering the caterer and flowers. She sighed. "Family comes first." Family, it seemed, meant Ethan. Nathan overheard and shook his head. "They're using you." He was right, but I still wired $400 to Mom for the diner's utilities, hoping to keep the peace. The breaking point came during a planning meeting at the diner. I brought sample invitations, excited to share them. Ethan glanced at them and smirked. "These look like they're from a discount store?" Mom nodded, adding, "Maybe something classier." I swallowed my frustration. But when Dad suggested I pay for Ethan's car to keep things fair, I lost it. "Fair?" I said. "I'm paying for everything. The venue, food, my dress. Where's your help?" Dad shrugged. "Ethan's got enough on his plate." Ethan just grinned. Like he'd won. Nathan squeezed my hand, whispering, "You don't have to do this alone." His support kept me grounded, but I felt the weight of their expectations crushing me. That night, lying awake, I replayed every time I'd bailed them out. Tuition, rent, bills. I'd been their safety net for years, but they treated me like a bank. Ethan's demands weren't just selfish. They were a power play, a way to drag me down. Mom and Dad's blind support for him wasn't love. It was enabling. For the first time, I saw how I'd let this go on too long. I'd given Ethan everything, thinking it was my duty. But it only fed his entitlement. Nathan had been telling me to set boundaries, and now I understood why. I wasn't just planning a wedding. I was planning a life, and I couldn't let my family hold me back. That realization shifted something in me, pushing me to take control before it was too late. 2 weeks before the wedding, the situation exploded. It started with a phone call from Mom. Her voice trembled as she said, "Clara, we have a problem. The diner's refrigerator had broken down. Repairs would cost around $2,000. Without hesitation, I offered to help. I'll transfer it tomorrow," she paused. "Actually, your brother needs some help too. His tuition's overdue." I froze. I'd already paid his semester fees. "Overdue?" "I sent that last month," Mom sighed. "He said the payment didn't go through." I checked my bank statement. It had cleared. Ethan was lying. That was the first crack in the illusion. That evening, I called him. "Why did you tell Mom your tuition wasn't paid?" He chuckled. "Relax. I needed some extra cash." "Ethan, that's stealing." He didn't even flinch. "From family?" "Please." I hung up, shaking. Nathan noticed my hands trembling and took my phone gently. "You need to stop enabling him," he said. But I was torn. Guilt twisted inside me. Then came the final betrayal. 3 days later, Nathan's mother, Linda Cole, called me in tears. Someone had messaged her on social media from a fake account, claiming Nathan was cheating, complete with doctored photos. We traced the account. It was registered under an email with Ethan's name. When I confronted him, he didn't deny it. I just wanted to see if he'd stick around once the truth came out, he said coldly. Mom and Dad brushed it off. He made a mistake. Don't ruin the family over this. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Nathan was furious but calm. If they can't respect you, they don't belong at our wedding, he said. I nodded, tears burning my eyes. They're my family, he held my hand. And I'm your future. That night, I made the hardest decision of my life, to uninvite my own brother. I called Mom first. Ethan isn't welcome at the wedding, I said firmly. Silence. Then anger. You're tearing this family apart over nothing. She screamed. Nothing? I snapped. He sabotaged my fiancé's family. Dad chimed in from the background, his voice sharp. If your brother's not invited, neither are we. My heart sank. So be it. The line went dead. I collapsed into Nathan's arms, sobbing. He whispered, You did the right thing. The next day, Ethan posted online, mocking me publicly. Guess some people forget where they came from once they get a ring. Mom liked the post. That cut deeper than I thought possible. I went through the wedding weekend with a pit in my stomach. The day itself was beautiful. The flowers, the music, the vows. But a shadow lingered. My family's absence was loud, their silence deafening. Still, as Nathan slid the ring on my finger, I realized something. I wasn't losing them. I was freeing myself. After the ceremony, we flew to Lake Placid for a quiet honeymoon. For the first time in years, I felt peace. No phone calls, no guilt, no demands. But peace didn't last. A week after returning, I found 14 missed calls from Mom. When I finally answered, she went straight to it. The diner's going under. We need $5,000 immediately, I hesitated. Mom, I just spent everything on the wedding. She didn't care. You're doing well, you can take a loan. Family needs come first. The old Clara would have caved, but not anymore. I can't, I said quietly. Her tone turned cold. After all we've done for you? I laughed bitterly. All you've done is take, she gasped. Don't talk to me like that. I mean it, I said. I'm done funding everyone's mistakes. That call ended with her hanging up, and days later, Ethan texted, Hope your perfect life falls apart. Nathan saw the message and just shook his head. He'll never change. He was right, months passed. I focused on my job, got promoted to senior engineer, and started saving for a home. But one morning, I got a letter in the mail from my parents' address. Inside was a legal notice. They'd listed my name as a cosigner for a business loan they'd taken years ago, one I'd never agreed to, $40,000 in debt. I felt my heart race. I called them immediately, Dad answered, calm as ever. We thought you knew. You forged my name, I said, my voice shaking. He sighed. It's family, Clara. We needed it. I was speechless. That's fraud. Don't make this a big deal, he muttered. I hung up, my hands trembling. Nathan contacted a lawyer immediately. It took weeks, but we got my name cleared. Still, the damage was done. Emotionally, more than legally. I realized then that my parents didn't see me as a daughter anymore. I was a resource, a lifeline they could exploit. It hurt more than I could admit, but there was also relief. I finally saw the truth. Nathan hugged me that night, whispering, You don't owe them your peace. He was right again. I blocked Ethan's number, muted Mom's calls, and focused on healing. Every morning, I'd look at myself in the mirror, no longer the girl desperate for approval, but a woman who chose self-respect over guilt. Still, sometimes at night, I wondered if they missed me, if they ever realized how much I'd done for them. But then I'd remember the lies, the manipulation, the betrayal, and the silence that followed. And I knew I'd made the right choice. Months turned into a year, and the silence from my family stretched on. I'd stopped expecting birthday calls, texts, or even apologies. But sometimes when I scrolled through old photos, family dinners, my brother's graduation, the diner's grand opening, a dull ache would surface. I missed the people I thought they were. Life with Nathan was steady. We bought a small house outside Hartford, with a white porch and a patch of garden that I loved tending to on weekends. He'd come home, kiss my forehead, and ask about my day, a simple rhythm that made everything else seem smaller. But one morning, that fragile peace cracked. Nathan came into the kitchen, holding his phone. "You might want to sit down," he said. My stomach tightened. "What is it?" He showed me a local news article. Family-owned diner in Hartford faces bankruptcy after financial troubles. The photo was unmistakable. My parents' diner. The caption read, "Owners Mark and Lisa Jennings say their daughter refuses to help." My chest went cold. They mentioned my name. Nathan nodded grimly. "It's going around social media." I opened Facebook. Dozens of comments flooded the post. People I barely remembered from my hometown were calling me heartless, selfish, ungrateful. Then I saw Ethan's comment pinned at the top. She abandoned her family for money. Some people forget who fed them when they were broke. I sat in silence, my throat dry. Nathan put a hand on my shoulder. "You don't owe them anything." "I know," I whispered, but my voice shook. "It just hurts." For days I tried to ignore it. But the messages kept coming. Strangers calling me names, old acquaintances demanding I make things right. Then came the worst of it. Someone posted my work email online. The harassment started, threatening messages, even calls to my office. HR had to intervene. My manager pulled me aside, saying, "Clara, maybe you should handle this legally." I nodded, holding back tears. Nathan was furious. "This ends now," he said, pacing the living room. "We're filing a restraining order," but I hesitated. As much as I wanted to fight back, some small part of me still wanted to understand why. So I called Mom. She answered after 3 rings. "Clara?" Her voice was soft, almost guilty. "Why did you let Ethan do this?" I asked, my voice shaking. She sighed. "We didn't know he'd take it that far. You went on record saying I refused to help." Her tone hardened. "Because you did." I clenched my jaw. "I've paid your bills, your rent, your debts for years. What more do you want?" She hesitated, then whispered, "We just wanted our family back." That broke something in me. You don't get to destroy me and call it love. I hung up. For the last time. The next morning, Nathan and I met with a lawyer. We filed harassment claims and issued a public statement through my company's legal department. It was humiliating, but necessary. Days later, the storm started to calm. The diner closed permanently. Ethan deleted his posts. My parents went silent again. But the damage lingered, not just to my reputation, but to the idea of family I'd clung to. One evening, I sat by the window, watching rain streak down the glass. Nathan joined me quietly. "You okay?" I nodded slowly. "Yeah, I don't know if I'll ever stop missing them." He wrapped an arm around me. "Missing them doesn't mean you need them back." His words sank deep. For the first time, I felt free. Months later, I got an email from Ethan. Subject line, "I need help." I stared at it for a long time before opening it. "Clara, I know I've made mistakes. Mom's sick. We can't afford treatment. Please, I'm begging you." My heart raced. Anger, guilt, fear, all tangled together. Nathan saw my expression. "You don't owe him a response." "I know," I said quietly. "But she's my mother." He didn't argue. He just took my hand. That night, I didn't sleep. I kept thinking of Mom's tired eyes, Dad's silence, Ethan's cruelty. By morning, I decided to help, but not blindly. I called the hospital listed in the email, confirmed the details, and directly paid the bill, $3,400. No messages, no notes, no calls. Weeks later, Ethan sent another email. Thanks. She's better now. Maybe we can talk sometime. I didn't reply, because some doors, once closed, shouldn't be reopened. Still, I found peace in knowing I'd done what I could, without losing myself again. Life slowly found its rhythm again. Nathan and I adopted a golden retriever, named her Luna. She followed me everywhere, to the kitchen, the garden, even my desk when I worked from home. One night, as Luna slept by the fireplace, Nathan asked, "Do you ever think about forgiving them?" I thought for a long time before answering. Forgiveness doesn't mean letting them back in. It just means I'm done hurting. He smiled softly. That's the strongest thing you've ever said. Maybe he was right, because in that quiet house, surrounded by warmth and peace, I realized I'd finally stopped living for people who only loved what I could give. I was free. Not because they changed, but because I did, and that, I thought, was the ending I'd earned. 6 months passed before I heard from them again. By then, my life had taken on a peaceful rhythm. Work, home, quiet dinners, walks with Luna. I'd started a small side business designing productivity software, and Nathan had joined me helping with marketing. It was ours, something built on trust, not guilt. Then one evening, as I was reviewing code, my phone buzzed with a number I hadn't seen in a year. Dad. I let it ring twice before answering. Hello? His voice was uncharacteristically calm. Clara, your mom's not doing well. My stomach sank. What happened? She's been diagnosed with early-stage heart failure. The doctors say it's manageable, but we can't afford her medication. For a long moment, I said nothing. A year ago, I would have reached for my wallet before asking another question. But now I just breathed in and said, I'm sorry. He hesitated. That's it? I'm sorry she's unwell, I repeated, firmer this time. Clara, please, he said, his tone breaking. She needs you. I looked around our home, calm, safe, full of warmth, and I thought of the chaos they'd brought into my life. The lies, the manipulation, the public humiliation. I'll think about it, I said. When I told Nathan, he just nodded. It's your choice, but make sure it's not out of guilt. That night I sat awake staring at the ceiling. I wanted to help, I did. But I couldn't step back into the cycle that had nearly destroyed me. By morning, I'd made up my mind. I called Dad. I'll pay for her medication directly, nothing more. He exhaled shakily. Thank you. I covered the prescription for 6 months, around $1,200, and left it at that. No calls, no visits, no emails. Weeks later, I got a letter in the mail. It wasn't from Mom or Dad, but from Ethan. I heard what you did. She's better now. You don't have to hate us forever, you know. I stared at it for a long time. I didn't hate them. I just didn't trust them. Still, I couldn't help but think about what forgiveness really meant. Was it possible to care about people who had hurt you so deeply without letting them back into your life? One afternoon, while coding in the living room, I looked at Nathan and said, Do you ever think some wounds just never close? He glanced up from his laptop. They don't close, they just stop bleeding. That stuck with me. Months later, life surprised me again. Nathan and I found out we were expecting. The news filled me with a mix of joy and fear. I hadn't thought much about motherhood since leaving my family, maybe because I didn't have the best example to follow. When we told our closest friends, everyone was thrilled. But that night, as Nathan drifted to sleep, I found myself staring at the ultrasound photo, wondering if I should tell my parents. After days of hesitation, I sent a short message to Mom. I'm pregnant. Thought you should know. Hours passed. Then her reply came. I'm happy for you, Clara. Take care of yourself. No guilt. No manipulation. Just words. Simple, fragile, human. It wasn't reconciliation, but it was something. As months passed, she sent small messages, gentle ones, nothing like before. Updates about the weather, the garden, even pictures of the diner's old sign they'd kept in the backyard. I didn't respond to all of them, but I read every one. Then one morning, she sent this. I hope your baby has your heart. You were always stronger than I was. That one made me cry. Nathan found me sitting on the porch, holding my phone. He sat beside me and asked softly, "You okay?" I nodded, wiping my eyes. She finally said something real. He smiled. Maybe she's changing. Or maybe I just needed to hear it, I said quietly. When our daughter, Amelia, was born, everything shifted. The first time I held her, I realized what unconditional love truly felt like. Something my parents had never learned to give, but something I could. Weeks later, while rocking Amelia to sleep, I got another message from Mom. Congratulations. She's beautiful. I'm proud of you. I didn't reply right away. I just stared at the words, realizing how long I'd waited to hear them. Later that night, I sent a simple message back. Thank you. No bitterness, no anger, just quiet closure. Nathan leaned in, kissed my forehead and whispered, "You broke the cycle." Clara. Maybe I had. For years, I'd been chasing love that had conditions. But with Amelia asleep in my arms, I understood something my parents never did. Love wasn't about sacrifice without boundaries. It was about respect, trust, and peace. And for the first time in my life, I had all three. 2 years later, I stood in front of the diner that had once defined my childhood, the chipped red letters still spelling Hayes Family Grill, though the paint had faded and the windows were clouded with dust. It was closing for good. A friend from Rochester had texted me that morning. "The old diner's shutting down this week. Thought you'd want to know." I hadn't planned on coming back, but something inside me needed to see it one last time, to face the place where so much of my pain had begun. Nathan offered to drive, but I went alone. It felt like something I had to finish by myself. When I pulled into the empty parking lot, memories rushed back. Me at 15, serving coffee to truckers. Dad flipping burgers while Mom counted the till. Ethan at a corner booth, doing homework and complaining about his chores. For a long moment, I just stood there, feeling both the weight and release of it all. The door creaked open, and to my surprise, Mom was there. Thinner, older, wearing the same apron she'd worn 20 years ago. Her eyes widened. "Clara?" I nodded. "Hey, Mom." She hesitated before stepping closer. "You came." "I heard about the diner," I said. "Thought I should see it before it's gone." We stood in silence, the hum of the refrigerator the only sound left in the empty space. After a while, she sighed. "Your father passed last spring." I blinked, the words sinking in slowly. "You didn't tell me." "I didn't know if you'd want to know," she said softly. After everything, for the first time in years, I didn't feel anger, just a quiet sadness. "I would have come," I said. "I know," she whispered. We sat at the counter, the same place I'd once counted tips late into the night. The air smelled of old grease and coffee grounds. She told me about Ethan, how he'd gotten a steady job at a hardware store, how he'd finally apologized for what he did that day at the wedding. "He's grown up," she said. "Too late for sorry, maybe, but he's trying." I nodded. "That's good." Then she looked at me with tears in her eyes. "I should have protected you, Clara. From all of it. From him, from us. I didn't realize what I'd done until you left." Her words hit harder than I expected. I'd imagined this moment so many times, but never thought it would actually come. I took a deep breath. "You hurt me. You really did. But I'm not angry anymore." She reached across the counter, her trembling hand brushing mine. "Can you ever forgive me?" I looked at her. This woman who had made so many wrong choices but had also taught me how to survive. "I already did," I said quietly. Tears filled her eyes. "You were always the strong one." "I had to be," I said. "Now I want to teach Amelia to be strong too, but soft when it counts." We talked for hours, not as enemies, but as two women finally understanding each other after years of silence. When I left, the sky was streaked with gold and pink. As I reached my car, Mom called out, "Clara?" I turned. "Thank you for coming," she said. "I didn't deserve it," I smiled faintly. Everyone deserves one last chance. On the drive home, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time: peace. Not the kind that comes from forgetting, but the kind that comes from accepting. When I walked through the front door, Nathan was in the living room, Amelia giggling on his lap. She ran to me, her small arms wrapping around my legs. "Mommy!" she said, her voice bubbling with joy. I lifted her, breathing in her warmth. "Hi, my love," Nathan smiled. "How was it?" "Hard," I admitted. "But right," he nodded. "That's all that matters." Later that night, after Amelia was asleep, I sat on the porch, watching the moon cast soft light over our yard. For the first time in years, I felt completely free, not from my family, but from the need to fix them. I opened my journal and wrote one line. Closure isn't something you wait for, it's something you create. And as the night deepened, I realized something beautiful. I hadn't just survived my past. I'd rewritten it. I built peace from chaos. I found love after betrayal. I chose myself. And because of that, I could finally love others freely. Maybe that's what healing really is. Not erasing the pain, but turning it into something that no longer controls you. And as the stars blinked above, I whispered softly to the night, "I'm home now."